The Galactic Council had watched Earth for 50 years before they decided to say hello. They had seen humans build cities and tear them down. They had seen wars and peace. They had seen humans walk on their own moon and then, strangely, stop going there for decades. The Council found this confusing. Why would any species reach for the stars and then just stop? Ambassador of the collective was chosen to make first contact. There were patient creatures, shaped like tall birds with 4 arms and eyes that never blinked. Had greeted 37 new species in his long career. He thought humans would be easy. They were small, soft, and lived on a planet that was mostly water. How dangerous could they be? The meeting happened on a space station called Harmony's Edge. It floated in empty space between Earth and Mars. The Council had built it in secret, waiting for the right moment. Captain Park led the human team. He was a man of 43 years with hair at his temples and a smile that made other people nervous. The Korean Navy had trained him, but he had left that life behind to join the New Earth Space Command. His superiors called him creative. His crew called him crazy, but the good kind. With came Chief Engineer. She was a small woman with quick hands and quicker thinking. Once, during a training mission, the ship's engine had caught fire, had fixed it with tape, wire, and a prayer. The engine still worked 3 years later. No one understood how. Science Officer Lee completed the team. He was young, only 28, with bright eyes that looked at everything like it was a puzzle waiting to be solved. He asked too many questions. He touched things he should not touch. His file contained 17 warnings about excessive curiosity. He had framed every single one. The 3 humans walked into the meeting room on Harmony's Edge. 12 alien species waited for them. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some had no shape at all, just floating clouds of light. Looked at them and felt his heart beat faster, but he kept his smile in place. "Welcome, humans of Earth," said. His voice was like wind through dry leaves. "We are honored to meet you." "The honor is ours," replied. He had practiced this moment 100 times. "We come in peace and friendship." The formal words continued for an hour. Treaties were discussed. Trade agreements were mentioned. Everything was polite and boring. Then came the question that changed everything. "We must ask," said, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. "How did your species survive the Great Filter?" Looked at the ceiling. "The what?" asked. Made a sound like clicking stones. The translator said it meant surprise. "The Great Filter, the cosmic radiation storms. They swept through your sector 4,000 years ago. 17 civilizations in nearby systems were destroyed completely. Only bones and ruins remain. Yet Earth survived. How?" The 3 humans looked at each other again, cleared his throat. "We did not know about any storms," he said slowly. "Impossible," stood up, his 4 arms spread wide. "The radiation was strong enough to kill all life above ground. Every plant, every animal, every thinking creature. For 300 years, your planet would have been bathed in death." 300 years, muttered. He was doing math in his head. 4,000 years ago, that would be, around 2000 BCE, the Bronze Age. "What were humans doing then?" whispered. His eyes went wide. "Building underground tombs, mining copper and tin, living in caves and underground cities in some places." The room went very quiet. "You are saying," spoke carefully, "that humanity survived extinction-level radiation because you were underground, digging." "We like digging," said. He was not sure what else to say. "We still do it for fun. We call it caving or mining. Some people just like being underground." "For fun," repeated. "It is relaxing," added. "Dark, quiet, no phone signal." The ambassador sat down heavily. Around the room, other aliens were making sounds of shock. A being made of crystal was vibrating so hard it hummed. A creature with 16 eyes had closed all of them. "Your species," said, "survived a galaxy-ending event because you enjoy crawling into holes in the ground." When you say it like that, it sounds strange, admitted. It is very strange. It is impossible. It is. Search for a word. It is very human, I think. After the meeting, the three humans walked back to their shuttle. They did not speak until the doors closed behind them. Should we tell them about the ice ages? Asked. No, said. The supervolcano that almost killed us 70,000 years ago. Definitely not. What about the time we split the atom, and then immediately used it to blow up 2 cities? Put his hand on the young man's shoulder. I think we should let them learn about us slowly. If we tell them everything at once, they might decide to never talk to us again. Was looking out the window at the station. Alien ships floated nearby, beautiful and strange. They think we are survivors, she said softly. They do not understand. Understand what? Asked. That we did not survive because we were smart or strong. Turned to look at her. Her eyes were bright with something between pride and fear. We survived because we are too stubborn to die, and too curious to stay safe. Nodded slowly. The galaxy is not ready for that truth. No, agreed, but they will learn. One way or another they will learn. She was right, they would learn, and it would terrify them. 3 months passed after first contact. Humanity was new to the galaxy. They had a small ship, a small crew, and a very big curiosity about everything around them. The Galactic Council gave them probationary membership, which meant they could watch but not vote. Most species thought humans would be quiet and learn slowly. They were wrong. The space station Nexus 7 was one of the busiest places in the galaxy. Ships came and went every minute. Traders sold goods from 1,000 worlds. Diplomats argued about borders and taxes. It was ugly and beautiful and very, very important. Then the reactor broke. It happened on a Tuesday, Earth time. A small crack in the cooling system became a big crack. The big crack became a flood of radiation. Warning lights turned the whole station red. Alarms screamed through every hallway. All personnel evacuate immediately, the station computer announced. Reactor meltdown in 6 hours. Repeat, reactor meltdown in 6 hours. But evacuation was not possible. The radiation had damaged the docking systems. Ships could not leave. 17,000 beings from 40 different species were trapped on a dying station. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Their best engineers studied the problem from far away, using cameras and sensors. The news was bad. The reactor cannot be fixed remotely, announced chief engineer of the. He was a being made of living metal, and even he sounded scared. Someone would need to enter the reactor chamber and manually redirect the coolant flow. Then send someone, said a council member. You do not understand. Pulled up images on the screen. The reactor chamber glowed white with radiation. Any organic being would die in 3 minutes. The radiation would cook them from the inside. Even our hardest metals would melt. So it is impossible. Yes, it is impossible. The human ship Perseverance floated near the station. On board, Captain watched the meeting through a video link. His crew stood behind him. They had only 20 people, but they were all listening. Lieutenant raised her hand. She was 26 years old. She had grown up in a city by the sea. She had joined Earth Space Command because she wanted to see the stars. She was not special or famous. She was just a young woman with a question. Captain, she said, what if we went in anyway? Turned to look at her, Lieutenant. The chamber, what if we just went in and fixed it? 3 minutes is a long time. It is not a long time when you are dying, said carefully. I know, his voice was steady, but 17,000 people will die if no one tries. I would rather have 3 minutes of doing something than 6 hours of doing nothing. Sergeant stepped forward. He was 30 years old, built like a mountain, with hands that could crush stone. I will go with her, he said. 2 people can work faster than 1. Looked at his crew. He saw fear in their eyes, but also something else. Pride, maybe, or that strange human thing that made people run toward danger instead of away from it. "You could die," he said. "Everyone dies," Captain smiled. It was a real smile, warm and unafraid. But not everyone gets to choose what they die for. They suited up in standard EVA gear. The suits were designed for spacewalks, not radiation. The council engineers shouted warnings through the radio. They said it was suicide. They said it was impossible. They said humans were insane. And entered the reactor chamber anyway. The heat hit them first. Their suits began to smoke. The radiation alarms in their helmets screamed so loud they had to turn them off. Through the white glow, they could barely see the cooling system. There pointed, "The valve is stuck." "I see it," ran forward. Her skin was already burning under the suit. She could taste metal in her mouth, but her hands were steady as she grabbed the valve. It would not move. "Help me," she said. Put his hands next to hers. Together they pulled. The metal groaned. Their muscles screamed. For a moment nothing happened. Then the valve turned. Cool liquid flooded into the reactor. The white glow began to fade. The temperature dropped. On screens across the galaxy, engineers watched in shock as the impossible happened. "It is working," whispered. "They did it, they actually did it." And stumbled out of the chamber. They made it 10 steps before they collapsed. Medical teams rushed to help them. Everyone expected to find dead bodies. The radiation should have destroyed every cell in their bodies. Instead, they found 2 very sick humans, sick but alive. They woke up 2 weeks later in a council hospital. Doctors from 12 species had worked together to heal them. It should not have been possible. The radiation dose they received would have killed any other species in seconds. "How are you alive?" the lead doctor asked. She was like Ambassador, and her feathers were ruffled with confusion. "Thought about it. Humans are hard to kill," she said finally. "Our planet tried to kill us for millions of years. I guess we got used to it." Laughed, then winced because laughing hurt. "Also, we are very stubborn." The Science Academy studied them for months. They wrote papers and gave lectures. They tried to understand how a species could survive such damage. In the end, they published their findings with a title that would become famous across the galaxy: Evolutionary Spite: How Earth's Hostile Environment Created a Species Too Stubborn to Die. Back on the Perseverance, Captain read the paper and smiled. "They are starting to understand," he said too. "Are they?" Looked out at the stars. "I do not think they will ever really understand, not until they see what we do when we are actually trying." Nodded slowly. Heaven help them when that day comes. Across the galaxy, species that had watched the rescue began to whisper. The humans were strange. The humans were reckless. The humans looked at death and did not blink. The whispers spread, and the galaxy began to learn. 1 year after first contact, humanity still had no real power in the galaxy. They had one small fleet of ships. They had no colonies outside their own solar system. They had no advanced weapons, no great wealth, no ancient history of space travel. By galactic standards, they were bobbies. Weak, soft, unimportant bobbies. This made some species think humans were easy targets. They were a proud race. They had conquered 20 worlds and ruled them with iron claws. They looked like insects the size of horses, with hard shells and sharp mandibles that could cut through steel. They feared nothing and respected only strength. When they found a moon rich with valuable minerals, they did not ask permission. They simply took it. Their mining ships landed and began to dig. They did not care that the moon was sacred to the people. They did not care that they had prayed there for 10,000 years. They wanted the minerals, so they took them. They were peaceful beings, shaped like clouds of colored light. They had no weapons. They had no ships built for war. All they could do was cry out to the Galactic Council for help. The Council sent a mediator. Her name was Han. Was 40 years old. She had been a lawyer in Seoul for 15 years before joining Earth's diplomatic corps. She had sharp eyes, a sharper mind, and absolutely no fear of speaking truth to power. Her colleagues called her the woman who never blinks. She arrived at the neutral meeting station with a small team of 2 assistants and no guards. They brought 50 warriors. Their overlord, a massive creature named, sat on a throne of black metal and watched her with compound eyes that reflected her image 1,000 times. "You are the human mediator," said. His voice was like breaking bones. "You are smaller than I expected." "Size is not everything," replied calmly. She sat down across from him without waiting for permission. Her assistants, a young man named and a young woman named, stood behind her with tablets ready. "I know why you are here," leaned forward. "You want us to leave the moon. This will not happen." "I see. May I ask why?" "Because we want it, because we are strong enough to take it, because no one can stop us." Nodded as if this was reasonable. "And you do not care about their sacred places, about the treaties you sign with the council." Laughed. It was an ugly sound like rocks grinding together. "Treaties are for the weak. They are weak. You humans are weak. The council is weak. Only strength matters in this galaxy." "I understand." Opened her tablet and began to read from it. "The Empire has a fleet of 3,000 warships. You have conquered 20 planets. Your warriors are feared across 12 star systems." "Yes," sounded pleased that she understood. "Earth has 47 ships. We have no colonies. Our warriors have never fought a space battle." "Correct, you are nothing." Looked up from her tablet. She smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting for this moment. "So we have nothing to lose," she said. The room went quiet. Many eyes blinked in confusion. "What?" "You have everything," continued. "An empire, wealth, power, reputation. If you fight us and win, you gain nothing new. We are, as you said, nothing. But if you fight us and lose, even one battle, you lose everything, your reputation, your power, the fear that keeps your conquered worlds in line." "We would not lose." "Probably not." Reached into her pocket and pulled out a small metal device. It had one red button on it. "But what if you did? What is the worst that could happen?" Stared at the device. "What is that?" "I do not know." Smile grew wider. "My engineer gave it to me. She said it was experimental. She said I should only press it if I was ready for anything." "Anything?" "Anything could be nothing, could be a bomb, could destroy this whole station with all your warriors and all your ships nearby." Shrugged. "I have not asked because I do not care. I have nothing to lose, remember." The warriors shifted nervously. Their claws clicked on the floor. Even, who had never known fear, felt something cold in his stomach. "You are insane," he said. "Possibly." Held the button loosely, her thumb resting on it like it meant nothing. "But that is the question, is it not? What is the worst that could happen? I have thought about it. I have imagined every terrible outcome. My death, my team's death, war between our species, the destruction of everything I love." She leaned forward, and her eyes were like black holes, pulling everything into them. "And I have decided I am okay with all of it. Can you say the same?" The silence stretched for a long, long moment. Then stood up. His legs were shaking slightly. "We will reconsider our position on the moon." "I thought you might." The left within the hour. They returned the moon to They signed new treaties with the council. They never bothered human space again. After they were gone, approached with wide eyes. "Ma'am, what did that button actually do?" Looked at the device in her hand. She pressed the button. Somewhere on their ship, a coffee machine began to make espresso. "Nothing dangerous," she said. "Engineer has a strange sense of humor." But they did not know that. No, put the device back in her pocket. They did not, and they never will. The story spread across the galaxy within days. A human diplomat, alone and unarmed, had made the Empire surrender using nothing but a coffee machine and a question. And that question began to haunt the dreams of powerful beings everywhere. What is the worst that could happen? Nobody wanted to find out. 10 years after first contact, humanity was still considered young and weak by galactic standards. They had grown, yes. They had 200 ships now and small colonies on 3 moons, but compared to the great empires of the galaxy, they were still children playing in the shadow of giants. The biggest giant of all was the Dominion. They had existed for 400 years. They had conquered 63 species. Their warships darkened the stars wherever they went. They did not negotiate. They did not trade. They simply arrived at a planet, demanded surrender, and destroyed anyone foolish enough to say no. No one had ever said no and survived. When they turned their eyes toward the Sol system, the Galactic Council panicked. Emergency meetings were called. Diplomats screamed at each other. Everyone agreed on one thing: humanity must surrender immediately. Admiral received the summons to the council chamber. He was 55 years old, with a face like carved stone and eyes that had seen too much death. He had commanded Earth's fleet for 8 years. He had never lost a battle, though he had never fought one against aliens. His enemies had all been human. He walked into the council chamber with his hands in his pockets. He looked bored. This made the council very nervous. Admiral Ambassador began. He had grown older in the past decade, his feathers now streaked with. "Thank you for coming. We must discuss the situation." Situation, smiled slightly. That is a gentle word for invasion. They have 10,000 warships, said High Arbiter, a being made of pure thought contained in a crystal shell. You have 200. This is not a war. This is mathematics. This is certain death. Probably, agreed. Then you understand. You must surrender. There is no other choice. No. The single word fell like a bomb. Council members gasped. Some made sounds of fear. Others simply stared in disbelief. No, repeated. Admiral, I do not think you understand. They have never been defeated. They have destroyed entire species. They will not show mercy. I understand perfectly. Then why refuse? Why choose death for your entire species? Took his hands out of his pockets. He walked slowly to the center of the chamber, where a holographic display floated in the air. With a gesture, he changed the image. Earth appeared, blue and green and beautiful. Can I ask a question? Said. Has anyone here actually fought really fought them, made them bleed? Silence. Everyone just surrenders, continued. They see the mathematics, as you call it, and they give up. But mathematics only works if both sides follow the same rules. He changed the image again. Now it showed Earth's history. Wars scrolled past. Ancient battles with swords and spears. Modern wars with tanks and bombs. The mushroom clouds of nuclear explosions. Humans have been fighting wars for 12,000 years, said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. Not against aliens, against each other. We killed millions of our own kind because we disagreed about lines on a map. We invented weapons that could crack our own planet in half. We created poisons that melt lungs from the inside. We made diseases in laboratories just to see what would happen. The council watched in horror as the images continued. Mass graves, burning cities, weapons that understanding. All of this, said, we did to ourselves, because we were bored, because we were angry, because someone looked at us wrong. He turned to face the council directly. They have 10,000 ships. We have 200 ships, 8 billion people who have never agreed on anything in our entire history, and absolutely no sense of self-preservation. His smile returned. It was not a nice smile. What is the worst that could happen? The fleet arrived 3 weeks later. 10,000 ships blocked out the stars around Earth. Their commander, a creature of metal and rage named Supreme Lord, sent a simple message: surrender or die. Admiral sent a reply: no. The battle began. What happened next was classified at the highest levels. The Galactic Council demanded reports. Earth's government refused to provide them, though when they retreated 6 days later, refused to speak of it at all. But there were rumors. Some said the humans used weapons that should not exist, bombs that tore holes in space itself, viruses that ate through ship hulls like acid, signals that made soldiers go mad and attack each other. Some said the humans did not fight like a military. They fought like animals. They rammed their ships into enemy vessels. They boarded cruisers with nothing but knives and rage. They died by the thousands and kept coming. Some said Admiral himself led a mission to the command ship. They said he walked through corridors filled with dead soldiers, both human and alien, until he found Supreme Lord. They said the two of them spoke for 1 hour. No one knows what was said. When the hour ended, the fleet left. They never returned to human space. Admiral filed his official report. It was 1 sentence long. Situation resolved. Please do not ask follow-up questions. The council did ask questions. Many questions, answered none of them. Years later, a young journalist found a veteran willing to speak about the battle. The veteran was old and dying, with nothing left to lose. "Why did you retreat?" the journalist asked. "You had the numbers, you had the power, you could have won." The veteran was quiet for a long time. His eyes, once bright with battle fury, were now dim and full of something like fear. "They did not fight to win," he said finally. "They fought to make us suffer. Every ship we destroyed, 3 more would come. Every soldier we killed would take 10 of ours with them. They were not afraid to die. They were happy to die, as long as they could hurt us first." The veteran shuddered. "We have conquered 63 species," he said. "All of them wanted to live. All of them surrendered when they saw they could not win. But the humans," he shook his head slowly, "the humans did not care about winning. They only cared about making sure we would never forget them." "And did you," the journalist asked, "did you forget?" The veteran looked at her with eyes full of haunted memories. "Never," he whispered. "We will never forget, and we will never go back." The journalist published the interview. It spread across the galaxy in hours, and everywhere it went, beings who had once thought humans were weak began to understand the truth. Humans were not weak. They were something far more dangerous. They were unpredictable. 50 years had passed since the day Ambassador first shook hands with Captain. Half a century of humanity in the galaxy. Half a century of chaos, wonder, and fear. The Galactic Council had tried everything to understand humans. They studied their history. They analyzed their biology. They watched their movies and read their books and listened to their music. Nothing made sense. Humans volunteered for missions that meant certain death. They explored ships filled with unknown diseases. They landed on planets where the air itself was poison. They befriended predator species through a process called exposure therapy, which seemed to involve letting dangerous creatures bite them until the creatures got bored. They asked questions like, "I wonder what happens if I touch this," right before touching something that could kill them. They said things like, "Hold my drink," before doing something incredibly stupid. They used the phrase, "It will be fine," as a promise, even when it absolutely would not be fine. And always they asked, "What is the worst that could happen?" The council had finally had enough. Elder received the summons on her 80th birthday. She was the longest-serving human representative to the Galactic Council. She had watched humanity grow from confused newcomers to respected members of galactic civilization. She had seen things that would make younger people weep. She was tired, but she was not done. The council chamber was full when she arrived. Representatives from 200 species watched as she walked slowly to the center podium. Her body was old, but her mind was sharp. Her eyes still held that strange human light that made other species nervous. High Arbiter spoke first. He was ancient now, his crystal shell cracked with age, but his voice was still strong. Elder, thank you for coming. We have called this meeting to address a persistent problem. Humans said it was not a question. Yes, sounded almost embarrassed. Your species has contributed much to galactic civilization. Your medicine has saved millions. Your engineering has opened new paths through space. Your art and music have touched hearts across 1,000 worlds. But smiled, she knew what was coming. But your people keep doing impossible things. Pulled up a holographic display. Reports scrolled past. Incident after incident. Humans surviving disasters that should have killed them. Humans solving problems with methods that made no logical sense. Humans looking at certain death and saying, "Watch this." Last month, continued, a human scientist entered a derelict ship that had been abandoned for 10,000 years. It was filled with a plague that had killed its entire crew. She wore no protective gear. She said she wanted to see what would happen. Did she survive? Asked. Yes, somehow. She is now immune to the plague and has developed a vaccine that will save 3 species from extinction. That sounds like a good outcome. That is not the point. Crystal's shell flickered with frustration. The point is that she should have died. Any rational being would have died. But she did not because humans do not follow the rules of rational behavior. Was quiet for a moment. She thought about her life. She thought about her species. She thought about all the impossible things she had seen humans do. May I speak honestly? She asked. Please. I think, she paused, gathering her thoughts. I think you are asking the wrong question. What question should we ask? You want to know why humans do dangerous things, why we take risks, why we look at impossible situations and decide to try anyway, smiled sadly. The answer is simple. We are afraid. Silence fell over the chamber. This was not the answer anyone expected. Afraid, repeated. Humans are the least fearful species we have ever encountered. You face death without hesitation. You. We are terrified, interrupted gently. All the time, of everything. We are afraid of the dark, afraid of the unknown, afraid of death and pain and failure. Every human carries fear in their heart like a stone. Then why do you act as if you are not afraid? Smile grew warmer. Because we decided long ago that being afraid was not a good enough reason to stop. She gestured and the display changed. It showed a human child, maybe 5 years old, lying in bed in a dark room. Every human child learns the same lesson, said. There is a monster under the bed. Maybe it is real, maybe it is not, but you cannot sleep until you check. So you check. You are terrified. Your heart beats fast. You reach your hand down into the darkness, even though you are sure something will grab it. And asked. Usually there is no monster. You feel foolish for being afraid and you go to sleep. Paused. But sometimes there is a monster, and sometimes it grabs you, and sometimes you do not survive. Then why check at all? Why not simply stay in bed, safe under the blankets? His eyes were bright with something ancient and human. Because the not knowing is worse, she said. Fear of the unknown is the greatest fear of all. So we would rather face the monster and know the truth, even if the truth kills us, than spend our whole lives hiding from shadows. She turned to face the full council. What is the worst that could happen? We ask this question not because we do not know the answer. We ask it because we have already imagined every terrible possibility. We have already accepted that we might die. And then we decide to act anyway because at least if we act, we will know, even if the answer kills us. The chamber was completely silent. For a long moment, no one moved. Then High Arbiter spoke. We are adding a new regulation to the Galactic Code. Section 7, Article 23. When a human asks, what is the worst that could happen? All personnel are advised to leave the area immediately. Laughed. It was the laugh of an old woman who had seen everything and was surprised by nothing. Fair enough, she said. There is a follow-up regulation, added. Oh. Section 7, Article 24. Do not, under any circumstances, answer the question. They will take it as a challenge. Nodded slowly, also fair. The regulations passed unanimously. They were translated into 10,000 languages and posted on every station in the galaxy. Warning signs appeared on human ships. Training programs taught young aliens to recognize the phrase and respond appropriately, which meant running away as fast as possible. But it did not stop humans from asking the question. Nothing could stop that. A century after first contact, humanity had become the galaxy's unofficial problem solvers. Strange anomaly in dead space. Send the humans. First contact with a hostile species. Send the humans. Experimental technology that might explode. Definitely send the humans. And whenever someone asked why humanity had become so important, the answer was always the same. Because humans were not afraid of the worst that could happen. They had already imagined it. They had already accepted it. And they had decided, with all the stubborn courage of their strange species, that knowing was always better than hiding. Even if the monster was real. Even if it grabbed them. Even if they did not survive. At least they would know. And somehow, against all logic and reason, they usually survived anyway. The galaxy never really understood why, but they had learned over 50 years to stop asking questions. After all, what was the worst that could happen? Better not to find out.